I just was watching the Russian ambassador to the UN, and he was answering journalists' questions, and he was basically giving updates as to what's happening. The two main things that will end this conflict, this targeted, not invasion, but a targeted military operation in Ukraine, not just in the Donbass, because a lot of people were saying, well, you're now spreading everywhere. Well, Putin initially always said it was going to be a targeted military operation in Ukraine, not just in the Donbass region. And the two things that will end this conflict are the demilitarization of Ukraine and the denazification of Ukraine. So that's what the two main asks he has. Also, going back to NATO's borders, I think it was the borders in 1979, and specifically having some sort of security that they will keep their promise, because what they're saying is that initially, when it was the fall of the Berlin Wall, there was an agreement made that NATO wouldn't be expanding eastward. But now the US and NATO are denying that such agreement ever existed, even though there are documents proving that that agreement went through. So they need some sort of reassurance that this is going to happen.
A lot of people talk about handshake deals that are not kind of being carried out or followed through with. And here's the thing too, fam. I want to point out that, number one, there is always the possibility that this could be a crazy distraction. This is theater. These are members of the World Economic Forum that are just, putting on a play to distract everybody, and stuff's going on behind doors.
Yeah.
But if you just kind of weigh everything out on the situation that it is, even just by going from what we've seen and everything, from what we witnessed in 2014 to what's going on right now, you can certainly make the justification that Vladimir Putin has every right to do this on his doorstep. The fact is that they've been killing ethnic Russians in the Donbass since 2014, since the U.S. And I'm not saying just the West. I'm talking about the U.S. We've known this. Fee has played the video twice where Victoria Nuland even says, fuck the EU. You know what I'm saying? Those were her words. This was a 100% propagated regime change by the United States itself. And with that alone, you can justify what Putin is doing. But if you want to leave justification off the table, fam, we at least got to expect that Vladimir Putin was going to do something, in the Russian Federation was going to do something, because A, it's right on their doorstep. Zelensky's talked about nuclear weapons. B, they've been killing Russians, bombing them in the Donbass region. Can you imagine some of his citizens? Because I know the U.S. wants, and Western media now wants to put forth, oh, they're protesting even against Putin in his own country. No, a lot of people in Russia were like, Vladimir, why haven't you done something? Why are you letting this happen? Are you kidding me? So that's just something to take into the thought process. And the fact that everybody keeps putting up that Ukrainian flag and saying, I stand for Ukraine, without knowing what's going on, fam, not even looking back 8 years ago, it's quite sad.
It is. And so they keep saying, I can't believe you're taking Putin's side, as if this is about Putin, when it's definitely not. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to just read the update as to what happened because people were freaking out. Me and Kim had a disagreement because she was like, he's a madman. I'm like, well, I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration. That's ridiculous. And we were going back and forth a little bit, but it's good. It's good to have these discussions. It's good to have these conversations. I don't hate Kim. I just disagree with her analysis of Putin being this madman. I understand where she's coming from, considering the fact that when somebody goes to nuclear arms, it's scary because that would literally mean the destruction of the whole world. But the thing is, the NATO and the United States have already threatened Russia with nuclear arms. That's something that's not being talked about. Now, so what happened was that Putin put the nuclear deterrent forces on high alert. And he was citing aggressive statements made by NATO and the tough financial sanctions. And of course, also you have to look into how the entire world is basically against Russia, save a couple of nations, specifically China that's taken more of a slightly favoring Russia. They're kind of fence sitting this one a little bit.
Yeah.
And a few others like, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba, the usual socialist nations, which is interesting. Like I retort to a lot of the socialists is that they're not, Putin is not a socialist by any means. So it's, there's a reason why they're doing that, because they're supporting anti-imperialism. They're supporting the pushback against the empire. Now, he issued this directive to increase the readiness of Russia's nuclear weapons, raising fears that the invasion of Ukraine could lead to nuclear war, whether by design or mistake. The Russian leader, and this is on apnews.com, is potentially putting in play forces that, if there's a miscalculation, could make things much, much more dangerous, said a senior U.S. defense official. And this, of course, came as Russian forces encountered strong resistance from Ukraine defenders, literally arms by the West that are being sent to Ukraine by so many nations. So that's pretty much what happened. Now, there is a video here from Reuters where they have Putin addressing some of the reasons why he decided to go this route. So let's play
it. Russian President Vladimir Putin put Russia's nuclear arsenal on high alert on Sunday, further raising the stakes amid his military assault on Ukraine. But Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky remained defiant, pledging to remain in the capital, Kyiv. Zelensky said on Sunday he'd agreed to new negotiations without preconditions with Moscow, even though he didn't hold out much hope.
I do not really believe in the outcome of this meeting, but let them try, so that later not a single citizen of Ukraine has any doubt that I, as president, tried to stop the war.
Yeah. Ukraine said it continued to hold off Russian forces from capturing Kyiv and Kharkiv, its two largest cities. Footage showed of a Russian armored personnel carrier outside Kharkiv, where locals said at least one Russian soldier had been killed. An unexploded Russian warhead landed in a kindergarten playground. In Kyiv, streets were deserted except for civil defense forces and the occasional ambulance. Plumes of smoke showed where Russian ordnance landed. Nearly 400,000 Ukrainian civilians have fled the country into neighboring Poland and Romania. The Russian invasion came after months of denials by Moscow. It planned to attack. Putin has called the attack a, quote, special operation. Western nations responded to the onslaught with an unprecedented array of sanctions on Russia's economy.
Our airspace will be closed to every Russian plane, and that includes the private jets of oligarchs too.
The European Union on Sunday shut all Russian planes out of its airspace. Putin thrust an alarming new element into play when he ordered Russia's deterrence forces, which wield nuclear weapons, onto high alert. A U.S. defense official said Washington was trying to assess what Putin's announcement meant in tangible terms, but that it increased the danger from any miscalculation.
Okay, so as you can see, obviously the mainstream media narrative is still calling this an invasion, while Putin has consistently, Moscow, right, has consistently called this a targeted military operation. Yeah. Also, the UN ambassador, the Russian ambassador to the UN this morning said that the notion that 100 civilians, that's being shouted out by the mainstream media, that 100 civilians are dead, Ukrainian civilians, has not been verified and is likely false, because they've been talking about the propaganda that's been put out there, which we're going to go over some of the propaganda because we'd be here all day if we went over everything. But yeah. We're going to try. I mean, it's insane how much propaganda and how many bots are out there. Yep. If you tweet anything from RT, the bots come today. You like, I tweeted something from an RT video. I quote tweeted the video or something like that, and they were like coming at me. You could tell they were bots, but it was like, yeah.
And they do a great job with the propaganda, fam. Didn't you like the one part? There was a bomb an unexploded bomb in a kindergarten playground. Yes. And, you know, a lot of people are calling out what's going on over there as far as the coverage is concerned. Very similar to some of the coverage that they faked in the Iraq war. I don't know if you remember the whole thing where the blue screen, right? Oz remembers, right? The blue screen, I was like, oh shit, the green screen. I'm like, cut. What are you doing? We got caught. It seems like a lot of funny business like that is kind of going on. I was listening to the No Agenda podcast yesterday, and Adam Curry was calling out some stuff. And you could, like, if you start listening, like, wait a second, what's going on? That dog that's barking seems very echoey. What's something? Are they in a studio? I mean, this is something that's going on because, fam, what we've talked about is that, this is not like an invasion. This is targeted attacks. This is, you will have to comply or you will get spanked. And that's what this is really what it's all about. You know what I'm saying? No nuclear weapons, no more killing people in the Donbass region. Okay. No more messing around. No more thinking that you're going to join NATO. You're on our border. If you're going to misbehave, I'm going to spank you. No more dealing with foreign entities. It's very similar to what Xi Jinping did in Hong Kong, where they throw out all the NGOs. Like, no more. No more. Not happening anymore. And that's what's going to happen in Ukraine for there to be peace. And believe you me, it's not going to be this whole freaking story with the Republicans, those neocons from the Iraq days that have come back like, these freedom fighters are fighting so hard. So you dump a bunch of AK-47 assault rifles on them and give them to the citizens. Oh, fam, I don't know if you can foresee a problem with that happening, but oops.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the propaganda. And I think one of the reasons why they get away with so much propaganda is because a lot of people alive right now were too young to remember the war in Iraq and to remember the propaganda. I mean, I barely, like, if I didn't go back and look at it as an adult, I would barely remember it. I was a child. So, like, it's just, what they're trying to do is they're trying to target a lot of the younger generation via this whole progressive, we're standing with the sovereign nation, the freedom of Ukrainians, blah, 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 because they don't know the history.
Yeah.
Because they weren't alive then. So it's just kind of like, it's easy for them to do that, which is why we're here to dispel that.
Yeah.
So
it's a privileged position, fam, right? Like, oh my God, you should be standing against both the United States and Putin when they do imperialism, this virtueness of like, yeah, I get it, but certain things have happened to put us in a position where Putin's doing these moves and it should be kind of expected. I know you got to wear your little Ukraine thing in your bio over there and be all peaceful and no war is good war, but just please stop at this point.
You have to understand the history.
Yes.
Simple as that.
Plain and simple.
So the EU then proceeded to ban RT and Sputnik from broadcasting at the European Union. This is completely, this is extremely authoritarian.
Fascism.
It's extremely draconian. It's extremely, this is the excuse, by the way. They've been wanting to do this forever.
Yep.
Several RT correspondents that we know have been talking, saying that this is what they wanted to do. They have been waiting for this excuse, and now they have the excuse to execute this, to get rid of this point of view, which is the Eastern point of view, which, by the way, it's not even like these people, Rachel Blevins or Kayla Maupin. It's not like they're like told to what to say. In fact, Tara Reid yesterday in one of the panels I was in, before we did the panel, she was saying, like, I love RT. They have never told me what to say or anything like to write. They have I've been given complete freedom to write whatever I want. And that is something that a lot of people, on the neoliberal side or on the Ukrainian side have been saying, no, you're just told what to do by Putin. And it's like, no. A lot of these people, like, on their Twitters, they say whatever the hell they want to say.
Yeah.
And so now they've started marking their accounts as Russian state affiliated media, not like their literal personal accounts, right? Which is a whole other bullshit thing that they're doing. And all these bots are starting to come in and harass them. And it's really, this is really dangerous territory that we're in, and more people need to be outraged and speaking out against this.
Yeah. Well, fam, it's what my mother first asked when I first turned her on to RT, and she like watches it now and stuff like that. And she's like, because she now peeks around, like she doesn't just stick at Fox. She wants to get other sources. She looks at some of our stuff. She looks at a little RT. She watched a little bit of Fox. She still can't take herself to turn on MSNBC and CNN. But if you think about like, okay, what RT's about, like you don't have to give anybody directions, right? Pretty much you just hire anti-establishment people, and already their narrative is all about truth telling and showing another side against the empire. So you don't have to sway anybody in any way whatsoever. You just say, okay, use the platform. If they threw you off, Chris Hedges, Larry King, all these people who've been thrown off, what's his name before he died? Our boy, Ed Schultz, right? It was like, okay, I don't have to tell them anything and stuff like that. Just put them on and provide them a platform. And that's what a lot of RT is for a lot of people. When they couldn't talk against the military industrial complex or the establishment or the empire, you know, they would get thrown out of these networks. And where would they go? They'd end up on RT, where they'd say, okay, you have free range. Do you, boo? Go ahead.
Yeah, and not for nothing. Some of the journalists that are most just like, they're the best at telling what is propaganda and what isn't, have worked on RT or have some sort of connection to RT, including, of course, Niko and, you know, some of our friends that I mentioned there before as well.
Anya was fired the other day, by the way. Yeah.
Who?
Anya was on there for a quick clip. She was fired the other day.
Yeah, that's another one. And I mean, it's you know, that's what I mean. Like they're giving a platform to people who are speaking against the empire. And they accuse them of spreading harmful disinformation, right? And they didn't specify whether this ban will apply solely to television broadcasts or whether the websites will be affected. So here is a video of them just basically saying, you know, all they're doing against Russia. Just a reminder to everybody, they're freezing the bank accounts and they're targeting specific giant accounts of the ways that Russia will do business. However, the sanctions don't necessarily include the gas, the money that Russia, because Russia supplies gas to a large portion of Germany. So like the sanctions don't necessarily apply to that, which is something really interesting, by the way.
Yep.
But anyway, let's just play this video.
In another unprecedented step, we will ban in the European Union the Kremlin's media machine. The state-owned Russia Today and Sputnik, as well as their subsidiaries, will no longer be able to spread their lies to justify Putin's war and to sow division in our union. So we are developing tools to ban that toxic and harmful disinformation in Europe.
They have no problem, fam, being authoritarian and fascistic, do they? What do you got? What are you hiding? What do they got? I mean, I don't get this. By taking them down, you're becoming everything that you're standing up against, right? You're representing everything that you're pushing back on. You are actually becoming the authoritarian. You're becoming the fascistic way of only state media is allowed. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is crazy. And not enough people screamed and yelled and stomped their feet, fam, when they were seizing bank accounts in Canada, because this is what's happened. You see what happens? This is what happens, fam.
Yeah, and they're proudly doing it. And they're saying, you know, Putin's war and this and that. And it's clear they only want one narrative told, right? And when, again, like even if you thought Putin was a despot and if Putin is wrong and all of this stuff, you should have the counteracting point of view. And this isn't the first time the empire has gone after press TV. They've gone after any sort of counter narrative that is presented by a non-Western perspective. And who are the perpetrators of the most interventionist wars, of the most coups? The West, specifically the United States and their NATO allies. So it's very interesting to me that the EU isn't at all talking about that. They're just, you know, saying this is the Russia, the Kremlin, and blah, blah, blah. Now, this is Putin. This is Putin talking about how the United States is the empire of lies.
Я пригласил вас для того, чтобы поговорить о вопросах, связанных с экономикой, с финансами. Мы с Михаилом Владимировичем обсуждали эту тему, имея в виду, конечно, и те санкции, которые сейчас так называемое западное сообщество, как я его назвал в своем выступлении, это империя лжи, пытается реализовать в отношении нашей страны. Ну, давайте начнем. Пожалуйста, Михаил Владимирович.
Damn. What do you think
You're gonna
about
just get accused you're gonna get accused of just liking hearing Vladimir Putin talk. That's what they would say. She just likes to hear Vladdy talk.
Yeah.
You're gonna get the accusations. She gets paid in Russian vodka. Listen to it. She's a Russian asset right now, fam.
I mean, I've been called it's funny you mentioned that I've been called a Putin bot and a Russian asset, and being told that my rubles aren't going to be worth as much now. You can go watch the comments on the video I posted. That video in particular. And it's hilarious. And you guys thought Russiagate was over. No, it's just been extended into this. It's been molded into this. And of course, who does the Western media have on to really talk about sensible analysis on foreign policy? I mean, this is the epitome of just arrogance and just complete and total American exceptionalism here. This is gaslighting. This is disgusting. You have one of the most leading voices that took us into the war in Afghanistan, Condoleezza Rice. Okay, one of the first leading, I would say, Black imperialists, right, of the era. Because I say that because a lot of people keep bringing up the fact that Zelensky is Jewish. That doesn't mean anything. You can have Black imperialism. You can have Latino imperialism. We have intersectional imperialism with the Squad. AOC has been regurgitating the same propaganda talking points. I just haven't had time to actually put them out there because she's the least of my worries when these fucking morons are trying to wage war and kill everybody at this point over their, with a proxy war. Because let's understand something here. Ukraine isn't fighting for their independence and their freedom. Ukraine is fighting for the United States and NATO's interests. The United States and NATO are waging a proxy war on Russia via Ukraine. That's what's happening here. That is precisely what's happening. There's no, Ukraine, blah, blah, blah. That's the fodder they've fed you, so you support some sort of sovereign independence of blah, blah, blah. But that's not the reality. This is about the United States and NATO. This is what it's always been about. So don't let them trick you about this, because this is why we have Condoleezza Rice here. Really, what she says, and I want you guys to listen to it and remember, she was one of the leading voices that took us into the war in Afghanistan. Anything you want to say, Pasta, before we go to the video?
Well, and
Oz, how long is this video?
Invade a sovereign nation, that is a war crime. I mean, I think we're at just a basic point there.
Well, it is certainly against every principle of international law and international order, and that's why throwing the book at them now in terms of economic sanctions and punishments is also a part of it. And I think the world is there. Certainly NATO is there. He's managed to unite NATO in ways that I didn't think I would ever see again after the end of the Cold War.
Really?
Yeah.
It's funny because Mitt Romney didn't make the cut, right? He just fell a little bit short, unfortunately. Because he was the other, now you have all, ladies and gentlemen, here they are. They're back. The band is back. All the neoconservatives that Fam just showed, Condoleezza Rice, who were wrong about Iraq, who were warmongers, who justified this stuff, who compared Saddam Hussein to Hitler, right? All this shit going on, ignored our involvement with Saddam Hussein, ignored all the things we were involved with, and now they're back, baby. They're back, and they're back, and they're bad. And they're going to be pushing this war. Yeah.
And they're using the same narrative. They're comparing Putin to Hitler, which is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. He's actually trying to stop neo-Nazis from expanding because they've expanded their control in the Ukrainian government, and that is a fact. She also states something that really got to me. It's illegal to invade a sovereign nation. Oh, really? Oh, really? Afghanistan was like a word. The entirety of West Asia would like a word, by the way, Condoleezza. Yeah. I mean, this is the person, one of the key warmongers that shouldn't even be free, let alone giving commentary and analysis on war. Yep. That's literally like having a criminal talk about integrity. This is just a joke right now, what we're living in right here, right? And
it's a cartoon, is right.
It is a fucking cartoon.
Like somebody that should never be allowed to speak again is coming back. But that's the mainstream media. They don't give a fuck. And you know what? It's just too many people take this shit. But that's the thing.
because they're trying to get the and I've seen it. I've seen the neocons come at me. Oh, you're just a commie. It's like Putin is not a communist at all. And then the left is like, oh, you're a right winger, because they're trying to equate Putin with Trump. It's like, well, pick a side, guys, because obviously you guys are contradicting yourselves here, right? Like, I can't both be a communist and a right winger. It's hilarious to me what I get called all day, but it just points to the fact that there's zero understanding of foreign policy. If there's little understanding of it within the people in Congress who hold public office, imagine how little of the understanding it is in the general public.
Yeah.
So, because we don't demand better. This is why I got so mad at that Seize the House panel when they failed. These are supposed journalists, the vast majority of them on that panel, and they failed to put in a question about foreign policy. You're not going to ask them about foreign policy while this is happening? And then, of course, what happens, we go into this conflict, and then it turns out all of the panelists and the vast majority of the candidates have the same foreign policy as George W. Bush and Barack Obama. And you're going to ask me why I was so anti that panel, why I went so hard at them, because I could see it. I could see that happening, because I'm not going to waste my time promoting any candidate that doesn't talk about foreign policy.
Yeah.
Period.
And if you don't understand foreign policy, and if you don't get this one, this is a layup. Really, this is a layup. There was a friggin' regime change, a coup in 2014 sponsored by the U.S. and you're not seeing this shit. This is a layup. And let's be honest too, as well. I'm not going to be part. If Marianne Williamson is part of any selection process to pick candidates moving forward after the shit she tweeted out this weekend, I ain't buying it. Like, I'm questioning it 24/7. And I did go back, fam, and I looked a lot of those candidates' campaign page, and it's really nothing about civil liberties, foreign policy whatsoever. They're just in their progressive echo chamber screaming Medicare for all, even now to this day. So what do you think about Putin in Ukraine? Medicare for all. What do you think about censorship from Twitter? Medicare for all.
Listen, we're not getting Medicare for all if we're all blown up into oblivion. So
that's it.
Get your fucking priorities straight, progressives.
Putin shots. Fuck Putin shots. $5.
I can't believe that shit. That's crazy.
And you couldn't believe what they said. That's what I had that moment. I just looked at Steve. I looked at Ben, and we're all shaking our head no. And here you go. You got Steve and Ben, completely different ideologies over here. I'm somewhere in between. And we all get this because we've been paying attention to what's going on. We get this so easily. And none of us are sitting there with Putin T-shirts on going, rah, 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 Putin. We can just see what's going on and go, yo, it's got to be expected that Putin would do this on his doorstep.
Well, I hate to break it to Steve, but anarchists and communists have a lot in common, Steve.
Steve's not here.
Stay mad. Cope, Steve. Okay. So he'll listen at some point.
I know.
So I have this tweet thread that I kind of put out because there are some things that were being discussed. We sort of discussed some of them. This is what you said earlier, how many Russians were upset with Putin for not acting sooner against NATO expansion and for allowing the infiltration of these bandit fascists into the government of Ukraine, which led to 8 years of attacks. So that's what you said earlier, which is entirely true, right? The other thing is the expansion of NATO and Western influence has worried Russia for a long time. Was told that it was one of Moscow's red lines that NATO would continue expanding eastward. William Burns, the ex ambassador to Russia from the U.S. and current CIA director, said that was it. If they cross that line, that would potentially lead into civil conflict, which would then force Russia to intervene, which is exactly what happened. And the other thing that Russia has been bringing up for a long time is the ABM, the anti-ballistic missile systems, which are so close to their border. And they've been saying that that's obviously going to give an upper hand to the West if any sort of strike were to occur. So they're obviously worried about that being at their border, which these are things they're looking at when they're like talking about why they have to stand their ground on this. And the other thing, this is kind of like along the lines of where I disagreed with Kim. I said there's this pervasive narrative in Western media that Putin is some sort of madman for responding in this way. But the reality is he's just reacting to the attempt by the West to expand its hold on the region via Ukraine. And if he's being gaslit by the vast majority of the Western media, which is why I was irritated that narrative was regurgitated by somebody in independent media, because that narrative is what's being used to blame this all on madman Putin instead of looking at the historical context that led us here, right? And I'm not saying that, nuclear war should be something that you go to, but again, we've talked about one of the things that have that led to that was because there was a threat by the U.S. and NATO with nuclear war, and Putin is no angel. Nobody's saying he is. I mean, maybe he has fans out there, but most people are looking at this, who are taking our stance, are looking at this geopolitically, historically, and I always put to the proposition, like, imagine if we had like Russians and Chinese, Chinese at our border with Mexico, like how quickly the U.S. would act if it was the tables were turned, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be 8 years, that's for sure. It wouldn't be 8 months.
It wouldn't be 8 months.
It might be like 8 hours later. Yeah. But if we can tap into our resources right here, the old man in the studio behind the scenes over there, Oz, I just want a really quick question I want you to answer. If you can put your mic on real quick. If you can give me a freak out level with 10 being the highest and 1 being the lowest, what was the freak out level when Russia, the Soviet Union, put ballistic missiles in Cuba right next to the United States? What was the freak out level of the United States at that point and our leaders, and how long did they stay there for? Can't hear you.
15 was the freak out level, which at that time, I think they invented Depends.
Okay. So needless to say, and when they put missiles over there, we freaked out. We're like, no way, you're not happening. We already have ballistic missiles in NATO on the Baltic countries there. How much more do we have to push a man on his border and put more missiles there before he reacts? And every single weapon that was used to kill ethnic Russians in the Donbass regions was provided by the West. They didn't just, enable the Nazi neo-fascist Banderite forces. They gave them the weapons to do so. Even Israel chipped in at one point. So people remember that as you put your Ukrainian flag in your bio, by the way.
And just going along those lines, a lot of academics and media personalities, including members of the UN, have said that this military operation by Putin is an illegal act. But let's go back to what has happened in recent history, because the UN was silent when the West bombed and interfered under humanitarian pretext many fucking times, including the bombing of Yugoslavia to protect Albanians from genocide. That's one of the things that happened in the past. Also, they ignored the 8 years of genocide in the Donbass region, as Plasta just mentioned, and that was precisely due to the funding, where 14,000 plus civilians deaths occurred. And you can add, of course, the incessant bombing and genocide of Palestinians by Israel, the bombing and genocide of the Yemeni people by Saudi Arabia, and the recent bombing in Somalia by the United States. But of course, that doesn't matter, right? No, there's no Somalian flags being put up, right? Like it's just, that's not happening. Where is the outrage? Why doesn't that happen? We could get into a discussion on that, but I'm just saying this is only fabricated. This feigned concern is what's been fabricated by the propaganda machine, and a lot of people are eating it right up. And again, the last one, which is I think extremely important, is that this whole event is being used to promote censorship, just like COVID was, just like January 6th, just like the general election was. And it's in the surveillance state is going to increase its power via this conflict. And it's doing it now, but it's doing it with the most approval of its citizens. And that's what they always do. It's some sort of psychological manipulation where they get you to they manufacture consent for the expansion of the surveillance state and, of course, war. And they use war to continue expanding the surveillance state. They're best friends, the war machine and the surveillance state. They're one and the same.
Absolutely. And, the whole thing about, with Kim's comment, going back to that, digressing back to that, I don't know if you remember this, when Bill Clinton got up and bombed Kosovo, which is kind of very similar to what we're seeing over here right now. He said that God told him to do it. Right? I mean, America's foreign policy is built on fucking madmen. Yeah. It's built on crazies. Right? You know what I'm saying? This is a guy who's like, okay, they're bombing ethnic Russians for 8 years on my doorstep. They said they're going to get nuclear weapons. The U.S. is providing them with weaponry after weaponry. Maybe I should tell them that they're not going to be able to do this and show them in a quick way. It should be expected again, but it's not something of a madman when he goes, all right, you really want to play here? Arm the nuclear weapons. Obviously, he doesn't want to use them. Nobody wants to fucking use them. But at the end of the day, he's got nuclear weapons on his doorstep. And the fact that Zelensky was saying that he's going to seek nuclear weapons, it's something has to be done. It's not madmanish. But when freaking Clinton goes, yeah, God told me to bomb him. This is the foreign policy that you're standing behind right now. We don't have fucking madmen running our shit. Anthony Blinken's not a madman. Get the fuck out of here.
And so, going along with this, the hypocrisy of a lot of people in the States with these Ukrainian flags, completely ignoring, of course, the neo-Nazi aspect of it. There are videos showing crowds of Black people being physically blocked from boarding trains and being held at gunpoint by guards in Ukraine. The NAACP Chief Bishop Talbert Swan and other activists accused the Ukrainian authorities of preventing the escape of Black people stuck in the conflict-driven country, obviously in Ukraine. They said white folks in Ukraine are blocking Black people from getting on trains, dragging Black people off buses, denying shelter to Black people in freezing temperatures, and holding Black students at gunpoint. So that was happening. There's a plethora of videos you guys can see online. There's a screenshot of that. There's one where they allowed the passage of a white girl and kept the Black people out. I don't know. I mean, they're saying these videos are unverified, but they're all over the internet, multiple videos in threads. And also the Ukrainian government has said that they're Russian propaganda and that they're being made to look bad. But you said something about Poland, Pasta?
Yeah. For what I heard is that the Poland foreign ministry said no Black people allowed to come into the country, pretty much. It's and we're trying to find out the laws from Hungary, you know what I'm saying? But there's no love for people of color in this area.
No, and also you can look at patients too and how they were treated in Canada as well.
Absolutely. It's you know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, this is, put that in your Twitter bios, guys. Harp on it.
Yeah. You social justice warriors. I see a lot of people with, anti-fascist, really? This is what you're supporting, by the way, because when it's about real fascism and real racism, we're against that. We don't virtue signal constantly, but we're against that.
Absolutely.
Hey, real quick, can we talk about how all these motherfuckers crying about Russian imperialism when they're defending Eastern Ukraine? How they want to cry about Russian imperialism now, but they don't say shit when it comes to Russian imperialism in fucking Africa. Like look at how much the Wagner group is trending now because their mercenaries are being used in Ukraine as opposed to when they're used in fucking African countries. Yeah, don't hear shit from those people.
Very much so.
Who is that? That was the consciousness of Pasta.
That's Next time I'm going to just go like.
Is that the voice of God? I don't know.
Oh, fuck no.
By the way, speaking while another friend of ours, Glory Jones, was mentioning that stuff, when me and Glory Jones were following our good friend Tulsi Gabbard, she was one of the only few to bring up the Doomsday Doorstep Clock, okay, the Doomsday Clock. This is something we have to realize. I've talked about the movie Crimson Tide. It's not nuclear war, it's nuclear holocaust because, it can end humanity on this world. We can end the world. We can blow up the world 17 times from what we have and our naval fleets alone. And now the clock is getting closer to midnight. At Doom's doorstep, it is 100 seconds to midnight. Here we are is the Doomsday Clock as we talk about these nuclear weapons. So, and yeah. By the way, really quick, we're going to take a 30-minute break over here to listen to a PSA from the defense. 30 seconds. A minute and 13 seconds, a little PSA. Let's go full screen on this, Oz, if you can. Really quick.
What the hell is this? A turtle?
This is the turtle. This is what they told you. And this is going to lead right into the next section, fam, of what you got going on because it's hysterical. And that's why I wanted to play it. This is what they were told in elementary school back in the day.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Dum, diddle dum dum, diddle dum dum, diddle dum dum. There was a turtle by the the name of Bert, and Bert the turtle was very alert. When danger threatened him, he never got hurt. He knew just what to do. He'd duck and cover, duck and cover. He did what we all must learn to do. You and you and you and you, duck and cover.
Be sure and remember what Bert the Turtle just did, friends, because every one of us must remember to do the same thing. That's what this film is all about. Duck and cover. This is an official civil defense film produced in cooperation with the Federal Civil Defense Administration and in consultation with the Safety Commission of the National Education Association. Produced by Archer Productions, Incorporated.
Well.
Fam. Duck and cover, fam. Right? Like a nuclear blast. Get underneath your desk, elementary kids, and you'll be safe. That's what to do when it comes to all-out nuclear war.